What up, everybody? It's Aaron here with Robert over there. Oh, you can't even see because my aspect ratio 4.9. So
Yeah.
Robert here with Get Your Geek On. We are here with WandaVision review of what episode are we on? 4?
Episode 4. Yeah, we interrupt this program. Very apt title.
Yes. I'll switch to a bigger TV now, since now we're past the 70s.
We're still in the 70s. I think we end this episode kind of in the same place that we were at the end of episode 3. So, spoiler alert before we go any further, as we talk about WandaVision episode 4. I know you and I have talked and speculated. We've gone back and forth on, what this show has been with the sitcom style, and it hasn't been giving a lot of answers, and it's really been a slow play and all that stuff. So this episode, we finally get some answers. At least we unravel the mystery a little bit. So talk to me about how you felt watching this episode. Did this satisfy your geek cravings? Are you on board with WandaVision all the way now? What's up?
I think I am. I want to say first, like we had talked about last time, we kind of knew this was going to be the interruption. I think, I kind of commented last time that this is where I think we're going to come away from that past and we're going to be like, what's going on? Yeah,
I didn't think that. I mean, that's something you said. I thought we were going to get a couple more episodes before we got to this point.
That's right.
And so
I have one win.
I am very glad that they didn't wait any longer. And I think we'll get into it. But I wish we had gotten some of this information sooner. Maybe not all of it, but some of it. That's just me. But I want to hear about you. And, this is kind of what you expected to see.
Yes.
So did it fulfill all of your expectations?
I think it probably fulfilled like 90% of what I was hoping for. You called it with the weapon. It's now for sword. It's weapon instead of world.
Right.
And I think you called that last episode. I think you made a comment that I think it's going to be a weapon.
I had seen that already, so I didn't really call it like that was something that
I was trying to give you a win.
Been picked up by Easter eggs, hunters.
So I think this really did fulfill a lot of what we needed to know what's going on. And plus, for me, I like knowing what happened right after the blip. Disappearing. And I think we got a crazy factor of it with Maria, because and I liked how Monica, how you slowly get that pan and she comes back. And all of my, I feel like everything I've watched from the movies, the TV show so far, everything's paid out. Like, I'm glad I've been watching everything.
Yeah, and just talking about that opening sequence where we get Monica rematerializing in a hospital, and obviously she was there visiting her mom. She doesn't really have an understanding of what's happened. It's not like she knew that she was gone. Yeah. She kind of comes back and she's like, "What's happening? I was taking a nap." She starts, she first sees her hands coming back, then she sees other people. She runs into the doctor. It's just mass confusion. Yeah, and this is very different than we've seen this moment played out in any other property so far. I mean, the first time we see people come back, it's an end game, and that's all very triumphant. We've got the heroes returning for our big battle. Yeah. And then the next time we see it is in Spider-Man Far From Home, and that's kind of played off for laughs more than anything else. Yeah. You get like the band coming back while a basketball game is going on. You get Marissa Tomei, talking about how she, showed up at home and somebody else was living in that apartment, and it's all played for laughs. Whereas this one, I mean, this is like, it's crazy, it's traumatic. She gets hit with like the news that her mom died 3 years ago, but 2 years after you disappeared. So she's getting like a total data dump in this moment. And I do think it's significant that it looks like we're kind of setting up that she and Wanda are almost two sides of the same coin, of these people that, are dealing with trauma and the way they're dealing with it. Because you can see Wanda's trauma, which is, it's just as fresh as Monica's. This is 3 weeks later, and I mean, she was blipped away too. So she had that moment where she had to sacrifice the person that she loves
right.
in hopes of saving humanity, then immediately see that undone, and then he's killed again in front of her.
Exactly.
And then then she just comes back and fights Thanos.
Go kill him, yeah.
And and now we're 3 weeks later, so she's fresh out of her grief. Obviously, Monica didn't get the chance to say goodbye, didn't get all of those things, and so she's dealing with her grief. And so I just think it's really interesting that we're seeing two strong female characters that are dealing with grief, and obviously they're dealing with it in a little bit different way. Like Monica is like head first back into being at Sword, which is really interesting. We find out that Sword has been around. That it was, built from the ground up by Maria Rambeau. So, Captain Marvel's co-pilot, who her call sign was Photon, which I think is Monica's one of Monica's monikers in the comics. And so it'll be interesting to see if she takes that up. But I thought that was really interesting that apparently they've been around for some time. We don't know exactly how long, but it'll be interesting to see if they get kind of reincorporated into maybe some past MCU stuff. If we start seeing, Sword was there, they were just behind the scenes, or that type of thing.
Kind of like S.H.I.E.L.D. at that point.
Yeah, and so it'll be interesting to see how much we get. And obviously, I mean, she had a relationship with Nick Fury as well. Maria did, and so it'll be interesting to see if he was around. Captain Marvel 2, I think, is going to touch on some of those things, and I really do hope we get Maria back in Captain Marvel 2. I hope that we, even if it's just an aged up Maria like they did with Peggy Carter, like I want some of that, because Captain Marvel, Carol, would have been around during that 5 years. She was not blipped away.
Right.
And so, when she came back to Earth because Nick Fury called her, did she reconnect with Maria and then find out that, Monica was blipped away, and then, she's dealing with her friend having cancer and all this stuff. Like, so that could be really interesting to explore too.
It will be. I mean, and like you said, I like that you comment that it's they're opposite sides of the same coin. Wanda is falling down the rabbit hole of depression, probably anxiety and everything else, where I like how one of the first lines we get from, was it Tyler, I believe, the acting director of Sword. And he tells her, it's only been 3 weeks and you're back, and you're the first one back. So what did she do to deal with it? She jumped straight back into work. And I like that, like you said, they are opposite. One's spiraling down and the other one's like, no, I'm going to rise up. I'm going to go back to work. I'm going to focus on my job. That's going to be my target. That's where I'm going to go. And, the little nods to everything. And again, I like how you said the blip playing out in Spider-Man was a joke. The only other time we really got anything in regards to like what they went through was Peter, when he sees Iron Man and he's like, hey, I think I fell asleep or something. And like, then the doctor's, he comes back and he starts doing and we have to fight. And it's like, he doesn't know either. And I like that now we get a normal person, like, one of us, like, okay, well, I was asleep for like 20 minutes maybe. And now I'm here.
And it's just, it's pandemonium. It's chaos. When she comes back.
That one nurse, he's like, do you have a phone? I need to call my wife. I need to do this. And then like, I like how you just see, I think someone was like on a gurney, and you see the arm just coming back because they were going to surgery or something. And I'm like, oh my God, I didn't think about that. Like someone that's going to surgery, just boop, they're gone. Well, now you're back, but do you still have to have the surgery, or what do you do now?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, like, oh my gosh, like I don't think of that stuff. And I love
these are things like, I think that there was, conversation when it first happened of like, oh, what about people in planes, or like, like that kind of thing. Like, and so there were conversations, but this is a different take that we hadn't really considered. Is like, oh, what about people that were like hooked up to life-saving equipment, or were, like you said, in surgery? Like, what if
going down the hallway for it?
Like, the surgeon blipped away, and so a patient died in that room, and now reverse it, the patient blips away, and now when they come back, there's no surgeon operating on. Like, so there's definitely new angles to consider, and it opens up that obviously, as celebratory as this would have been for 90+% of the people that came back and their family members, there's real pain and loss here that happened from the blip. I mean, we know that Tony was really like insistent, like we cannot erase these 5 years, because like we can't lose what we've gotten. But that decision has had ripple effects by not deciding to go back. I mean, Monica lost 2 years, with her mom, and how many other people, lost those types of things that they cannot ever get back. And I'm not saying it was the wrong choice. I'm not saying that Tony made the wrong decision, but that decision does still have impact. It does still have consequences. And I really like that this show is diving into this. And this is what I was getting at earlier, is that the early sequences all the way up to when Monica actually gets sucked into the town of Westview. This is information I would have loved to have had sooner. Really? All the stuff after, like where they're outside and they're figuring out that it's a sitcom and Darcy's there and they're doing all that stuff. I think that was at the perfect spot for where it is. But I do wish that we had gotten some more background on Monica and that we had at least encountered this from the outside without knowing anything about it. I wish that we had gotten that sooner. Not necessarily, it didn't have to be the first thing in the first episode, but maybe like a button on the first episode. Like the first episode is exactly the same. And then this is kind of the post credits and we get that sequence, all the way up to when she actually gets sucked into the town. And then we kind of do that's my preference. Obviously we didn't get that. This is what we're dealing with. And I think it still works, but I do think that episodes 2 and 3 dragged for me, because it was too long of setting up without really getting any sort of payoff. And so I wish we had gotten some of this information sooner.
And I think it's something that we've talked about before. I don't know if we talked about it on the show or not. I think this one is more one of those you need to binge. I think this isn't something that we should do week to week. I think you called it before. I think this is something that we just need to sit here and binge, because then by the 4th episode, you're only like an hour and a half in. And then it would be like, oh, well, that's not a bad investment. I just sat here for an hour and a half and waited that long versus now we waited a month to get this bit of news. So, I think I really starting to watch it more and more. I'm like, I think this should have been binged. I don't think this should have been a weekly thing. But I do want to talk about this. So we get Tyler. We got Darcy back. Dr. Darcy now.
Correct.
Kate Dennings?
Kat Dennings.
Kat Dennings. She's back. We got Jimmy Woo. I forgot his real name.
Randall Park.
Randall Park. He's back. And I love that we're getting all these little characters are coming back. And I do love that. I've loved Jimmy Woo since Ant-Man. I think he was a funny character. I think he was a little over the top, but I liked him.
And he was one of my favorite parts of Ant-Man and the Wasp, because I think that isn't a great movie. And I think as a palate cleanser, it came right on the heels of Infinity War and it felt very out of place. And so, but I did like his character, and I liked, I really am liking him in this show. I think he's been an excellent addition to the show in this one episode. I like his interactions with Monica. I like his interactions that he has then with Darcy. Even with director the Tyler character, who's the acting director of SWORD, is he's kind of like, I don't think we should do this. This is not a good plan. Like all that stuff. Like I like that he's very confident in Ant-Man and the Wasp. He felt a little bit like incompetent. And I wasn't necessarily a fan of that portrayal, just because it was like, I understand that, Ant-Man and Wasp and, Hank Pym, like they're all very intelligent. And so they're able to outsmart him and those types of things. But he did feel a little bit like sometimes he was played off as he's a joke of an FBI agent. And in this one, he's on top of it. Like he knows what's going on. And I really appreciate that. And I really like his interplay with Darcy. As they've started to develop like a professional bond where, like no one else is really giving her the respect she deserves for the fact that she's discovered all this stuff. And he's like, great job, keep up the good work.
That's all
like
she
all
wants.
that stuff. And I really appreciate that, because it's something that more people should have been doing, giving her credit. And, they're making a point that, that's not always the case. People don't always get the credit they deserve, but he's like, no, I'm, like you're doing a great job. Let's keep it up. And so I appreciated that.
And now I want to throw some of the, because this had a lot of stuff in it. And there's a lot of little Easter eggs, I think. And there's a couple I want to talk about. The first one is to Jimmy himself. The magic trick at the very beginning. Did you catch it?
Yeah, and when he flips out his badge.
Yeah, with a little business card in his hand. Yeah. Now, I love that because that throws us back to Ant-Man and the Wasp, where he's doing magic. Ant-Man's doing magic tricks, little card tricks. And it's like, did Jimmy pick that up? Did he start learning?
They commented on it in Ant-Man 2, is like he keeps asking Scott how he's doing the magic. They even show him at one point, he's like in his office at the FBI headquarters, and he's like on a website that's like, closeupmagic.com or something like that. So clearly he's used his 5 years of the blip to learn
that was
this
a perfect trick too. Like, I'm like, what? And it's a perfect little sleight of hand. And I love it because it's just a small nod, but I love these little, that Marvel keeps these little, quirks about these characters. It's not like, oh, okay, here's your normal business card. No, how am I going to add that magic trick back to him? So you get that back. We see the drone, and I like that we see how it really looked now. Yeah,
and this is interesting because a lot of people, and it's true, and I went back and looked, when that drone showed up in episode 2 as kind of like a toy helicopter, it had the sword logo, but it also, it kind of looked like Iron Man colors.
Right, we said
and
that.
And this one is clearly Captain Marvel colors, which are just slightly different.
Right.
And so it's really interesting that when it got warped into the new reality, the colors did change. They are Iron Man colors. Yeah. And so clearly there's a subconscious thing with Stark running through, but it's still, obviously we got, it got changed, for that new reality. And that's not the only thing that gets changed. We see the beekeeper who was wearing a hazmat suit, and now he, becomes a beekeeper, and we don't see what happens to him.
No, we don't.
After that moment. That's part of the mystery that's still out there. But I do think it's interesting that we see two things come out of Westview that were previously in there. The first one is the chain that was attached to that agent.
Yes, that becomes
it comes back with the rope. End of it is like now like a jump rope.
Old school jump rope too, like
right.
80s.
And then of course 70s. We see Monica get expelled, and she's still wearing her 70s clothes when she gets expelled. And so what that's telling me is that once that reality changes, it's changed.
Yes. Until she probably makes the change back.
Right. She clearly is going to change out of her clothes and all that stuff.
No, I mean, like, unless Wanda changes the physical, like that cable, it's not going to change ever unless Wanda goes and changes it.
And so we're getting a heavy dose of these reality altering powers, which I
love. Finally, after I don't know how many years, we're finally getting the Wanda I've read in comics. It's not just, like a magic ball of energy. Like, no, we're getting the reality warping powers that we all know and love from the comics. And, I want to touch on that. So we get Darcy in there. Like you said, no one's giving her respect. She sets up that old school the old school little like TV, that circular one.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know how much you know on this, because this is deep kind of into X-Men lore. If you look at the name, it's actually Lexington Corporation or Lexington Communications or something. Lexington is a mutant from X-Men who is part of House of M. So now we're finally getting more and more connections to House of M, which I'm still against if they're going to go that route. I think they're just going to throw nods to it. I think they're going to do this. They're going to throw little nods to it because, again, the whole point of House of M was no more mutants. All mutants died except 196 of them. And Lexington was one of the ones affected by Wanda's real powers when she took away his mutant abilities. And I think I can't remember if it killed him or not. But I love that we're getting these little nods. And I know there's a lot of people out there that are for House of M, that this is a House of M. We're going to get a House of M ending. And I'm like, I still don't see it yet. Like, I get these nods. Yeah. I want it to be House of M, but we got no Magneto. The only thing we have right now is the Vision death. We have the twins. We may or may not get Mephisto. But the thing is, we need like the catalyst to make her say no more mutants, but we're not going to get that because there's no mutants here.
Well,
so I'm wondering where they're going to go.
I'm interested. So this is I want to throw out some speculation. So when Monica gets kicked out and she's like, it's Wanda, it's all Wanda. Okay.
But she's like going in and out, right?
We're 4 episodes into a 9-episode series. It's not all Wanda. They're not going to give that to us in episode 4. No. There is something else at play here.
Which Agatha, right? You're thinking
Agnes, and I don't know if it's if it's Agnes or if it's Dottie or if there's someone else that we don't know, I think that, the missing person that caused everyone to show up in the first place, that's what caused, Jimmy Woo to even show up, is that his missing person was someone in the witness protection program. I don't think we've seen that person in the show yet because he hasn't been able to identify that, hey, that's my guy or that's my girl. So I think that person is going to be significant. I don't know who it is yet, but I also am just thinking that somebody, somewhere in Wanda's grief, remember this is, 3 weeks, and we don't know exactly how long she's had this set up for. We assume it just went into existence because, Jimmy tells us that his person, just went off the radar or whatever. Yeah. He thinks he flew the coop. So we think that's the point that it started, right? Right. Is right around that 3 weeks. So my theory, and I don't know if it's Mephisto or if it's someone else, I think that Wanda, in her grief, has been taken advantage of by someone telling her, you can have Vision back. You can live this life. You can, here's how we can do it. Here's what I'll help you do. And so, well, I do think Wanda is in some sort of control over this, and she's clearly altered reality around, this town of Westview, made people forget that Westview existed, maybe, all those things. I think a lot of that is Wanda, but I think that the person censoring the broadcasts and possibly, ultimately behind this is not Wanda. I think there is someone else at play and something else at play here.
I know you don't know the comics. Is there anyone that you want to throw out there that you think it could be?
Well, so I think that there's a couple of possibilities. Obviously, Mephisto is the big one, right. Where, he was heavily involved and clearly, and we didn't really hit on this, but in episode 2, they really hammered it home, but there's been nods to it in episodes 1 and episodes 3 also, is how important it is for these children to be here. Like that's what leads to at the dinner. That's one of the questions that, Mr. and Mrs. Hart are asking is, where are your kids? How come you don't have kids? Yeah. Agatha is asking that earlier in that episode, like, where, you got to have some kids. And then in episode 2, she's like, making references to Wanda having kids. And then of course it's all for the children very creepily, and so like clearly there's an undercurrent here where I think her having kids is really important to whoever's behind this. And so that does lead me to Mephisto. I think that's, like you say, I think that's everybody's choice is Mephisto. Yeah. But if we don't get him, who else do you think it could be? Well, so I'm wondering if, at some point is Doctor Strange going to be involved here? And then, who is that mystery missing person? Who could that be? Is it a, metahuman? Is it someone with superpowers? Yeah. Or is it just, some random individual who, maybe has a connection to some other superpowered person or something like that. So I don't know who else it might be. Yeah. But I do think it's very interesting. And I loved the way that we as the audience have seen more of Inside Westview than the people in the show. Exactly. Because they keep getting cut scenes that we actually get to see. So that scene where, the radio, where they're talking on the radio, we see the other side of that. We see them trying to talk to her, but they actually get that cut out of the broadcast. Whereas we saw that moment. We saw the confusion between the two of them. We saw them look at the radio. We saw, the glass break in Dottie's hand. And so we saw that moment and the red blood. They did not see that on the broadcast. And so it's really interesting because clearly there are moments that are being cut out of the show for them that we're still getting to see. Yeah. And I agree. I think that this episode kind of helped piece all of that together. Like you said, everyone's seeing everything. The one thing I don't know if I like enough is that Sword is sending all these drones in and they're just going in and not going anywhere essentially. And I'm like, why do you keep doing that? You're wasting money. You're wasting resources. But I do like. Yeah, I mean, we see one other drone go in and disappear. It kind of makes it sound like they've been sending more in, but we don't know that officially. I mean, and that's true. I do like that we see how aware Darcy is of all her surroundings. I love how she picked up on that so quick. Like, so you got Air Force, this, and I'm like, holy crap! She noticed in just a few steps
like everybody that's there. So it also shows you how much they probably have used her in the past, you know, that we don't know what's happened since the second Thor film was the last time we saw her.
Yeah, that's the last time we saw her, which was back in 2013. So it's been,
so what's happened?
It's been 8 years of our time, and this is 2023 in the MCU timeline, because that's when the events of Endgame took place.
Exactly.
And so she's had a lot of experience in between, for sure.
And that what I'm thinking too is she was never blipped away based upon how she now is a doctor.
Correct.
She's commented all this stuff. Like she's analyzing everybody in that, let's face it, in that truck, she's analyzing everybody. The first comment, oh, the Boy Scout. Okay, cool. Got who you are. Got you. Okay. And then when he's like, well, I'm this. And she's like, I just don't care anymore. Like you just wasted.
And I do like that she identifies based on the broad spectrum of people that have been brought in, they don't know what they're looking at yet.
Exactly.
Because they're bringing in experts from every field because they haven't identified what is going on. And so, I like that she's able to figure all that out. I like her detective work of figuring out, the cosmic radiation, which
really?
I don't know about you, but with that, and then Monica and the director, at Sword talking about the astronaut training program and things like that, Fantastic Four, like that is, I'm totally getting Fantastic Four vibes.
I'm so hoping that somehow a Reed Richards gets mentioned. Like you should probably call Reed, because this is like dimensional stuff. Like just a throwaway line would make me happy. And I want to kind of comment on that. So like, I know I asked you like who you think, and I agree with you that I think Mephisto is the main one. Maybe Agnes is behind it somewhere too, because we don't know where she plays yet. Yeah, I mean,
there's been a ton of speculation that she's Agatha Harkness from the comics, and I think that is I think that is very likely at this point.
I agree. I have 3 other choices who I think it could be, and I'm going to go with my least one that I think it could be. Dr. Doom somehow is involved. And the only reason I'd say that is because Dr. Doom is also a scientist, but he's also a master of the mystic arts.
Right.
Dark arts. Yeah. So he could just somehow be involved. He could be the missing person, or it could be like his friend Boris, which is the only true friend of Doom. It was Boris. So maybe Boris was under protection. He was trying to run from Doom maybe or something. And somehow Doom's involved.
Sure.
My second guess would be Mr. Sinister, which would give us a tie to the X-Men. Right. Mr. Sinister is always trying to like figure out mutants, always trying to like abuse their powers. Right. And maybe he's trying to play into Wanda. Like you said, someone's controlling it and being the puppeteer of all of this, yes, go do this. So he's trying to analyze her powers so he can figure out like, okay, what is she? And then he starts realizing they're mutants, and we get a Mr. Sinister.
Could be.
The only one that I really think it could be, and this is where I'm going to put some money on, Kang the Conqueror. Because we know he's supposed to be coming out sometime soon. What happens if the missing person was another version of Kang? Kang was coming to get him, but then there was a whole mess of stuff that's happened because Wanda's breaking down, and everything just blows up from there. And we're somehow going to get Kang attached to it. Yeah. I'm wondering. It'd be a further reach, but I'm wondering.
We do know that Kang is coming in the next Ant-Man movie. But I don't necessarily see that coming into play, because his power set doesn't really lend itself to being part of this like mystic situation, this reality bending situation.
Which is why Sinister and Doom too, because Sinister would make sense, because that would give us our X-Men tie-in.
Yeah, I like the Dr. Doom call. I don't think that's going to happen, but I like that call. But I do think it's really interesting, kind of getting back to what we see in the show. We get, Jimmy is asking a lot of the same questions that we've seen posed. He's got his whiteboard and he's like, why are they on hexagons? What's up with the sitcoms? I was reading all of that. Like why, and is this the same reality? What does their time and space look like? All that good stuff, which I think is really interesting.
And that's that detective side of him I love, because he's trying. Yeah,
but we also get them, trying to identify, actual people. And so we see pictures matched up with IDs. They have a board. They've been able to identify like Mr. and Mrs. Hart, Norm, Herb, Beverly, all these different characters. They have a picture of Agnes, of Catherine Hahn's character, but no ID for her. So they have not been able to identify who she is. And Dottie's not on the board at all. Yeah. And I think it's significant that those two are missing in terms of being able to identify who they are, because obviously we know or we think that Agnes is actually Agatha Harkness. And then Dottie was set up in episode 2 as she's the key to everything in this town. Yeah. That's how she was introduced. And so it's really interesting, like, who is Dottie? Is she Mephisto?
Exactly.
Because there even is, a reference to, like, at one point she says the devil's in the details, and then Agnes kind of makes a joke of it, and like, that's not the only place he's at. So it's really like they're setting some groundwork. They're setting some groundwork that Dottie could be someone very sinister.
And again, I think it comes back to episode 2 with the red blood, like how red that was. And again, Mephisto he's Rare's red. He is red essentially. So, I mean, that's a huge throw to him.
Yeah. I mean, he's basically the devil. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm curious. So, in this episode, we got a lot of details of what's been happening on the outside. So so we got, like you said, the IDs. We're kind of figuring out everybody. We get her thrown out, and that's kind of like the big thing. That's like where it ends.
Well, we have to talk about that moment after she gets thrown out and Vision comes back in the house.
Oh, yes. I didn't know
because, man,
yes.
When she turns around and we see dead, lifeless Vision with the hole in his head, he's gray, his eyes, but he's talking, and it's like, holy cow. Like, so this is confirmation that Vision's corpse has been reanimated in some way. Yeah. And she's using her power to change his appearance. Now, whether she's given him life and, it's all fake, or whether he's actually been brought back to life, he still just looks like that. Yeah, because we don't actually know that. Yeah. But man, that was creepy. And
my God, I loved it though. And I did love that. That's another part where we get her powers, because right before that, she pushes Monica through like walls and walls, and she just goes flying until she like, breaks the bubble. Yeah. Yep. And so God, that Vision part, I wasn't sure how I wanted to take it, because I'm like you said, are you reanimated, or and this is where I think this is why everyone's putting the money on Mephisto. Mephisto probably could do something to help bring Vision back from the dead. As long as there was somehow magic involved, he can do it. So maybe his magic is keeping Vision alive, and her magic makes it the appearance for him. Right. Because Mephisto can't bend reality.
Yeah, I mean, it's clearly she's using her powers to alter his appearance. Yeah. The question is, what do the rest of the townsfolk see? Do they see dead corpse Vision walking around? Do they see, the version? Because they make a big point of it. Anytime someone else sees him, they change his appearance to make him look human. So you would think she's doing that, but maybe all of these people that are trapped in this town and are like being forced to kind of play along with this, maybe they're seeing creepy dead Vision all the time.
And that that would make sense, because you have the doctor from episode 3 where Vision picks him and he's using super speed, and the doctor's just like, okay, that's almost a norm for him. It's like he doesn't really comment that like not in shock, like someone not, he doesn't, does he know he's not really a human? Because it's like anytime powers get used in the show and they're observed by any of these characters, they skip past it, going very fast. Yeah. But not like, oh, that was superhuman or anything like that. Yeah. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, like you said, what are they seeing afterwards? We still don't know where the beekeeper is in this one, the sword agent. We don't know where he is. Yeah. We don't know exactly still what everyone's about. And I think our next episode's going to go back into the show, though. I don't think we're going to get any more answers outside of it yet.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what format they take from this point forward. Like, are we going to get a episode of WandaVision and then, 5 minutes outside, or so it'll be really interesting to see now what format this takes as we move forward. Because the first 3 episodes were exclusively episodes of WandaVision. Yeah. But then we've gotten now this episode, which the only time we entered Westview was to see a scene that they couldn't see, which was the confrontation between Scarlet Witch and Monica, where, you know, like we saw the full version of that this week that we didn't get last week.
Right.
And we see, you know, Wanda just, you're out of here.
Exactly.
And then we see that scene with Vision and everything. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what we get moving forward, because I think we're going to get a mix in most of the episodes. I think we are going to, you know, we know we're going to return back to the sitcom land, because we've seen in promotional videos, we've seen pictures of them in the 80s. We've seen, you know, even stuff that it looks like they're all the way up to maybe even like the Modern Family type era, where you have, you know, Elizabeth Olsen kind of sitting in a chair talking to the camera like they do in that show.
Well, I heard rumors they were going to like make a Full House reference kind of thing too at some point.
Yeah, so I think
even though she's not in it, but her sisters
Yeah, I think we're going to get 80s, 90s, 2000s, and, you know, like, so something like that. I think we're still going to get a lot of that, but it will be interesting to see how much of a mix we do with the outside world, because I think we're going to get that. We're going to continue to have, I think Monica's going to obviously try and go back in at some point. I don't know what that's going to look like. Is Wanda going to remember her? Is it, you know, like, is it going to be something, you know, where she doesn't really have memory of it, of their previous interactions? You know, obviously the kids are still going to play a storyline. There's something going on with them and why they were created, why it was so important for them to have kids.
Exactly.
So yeah, there's a lot at play. And so even though we got some answers, we still have a huge mystery to unpack. And yeah, I think that I am on board with this show, and I do think that the payoff is going to be very good. I think this is going to end up being a very good show. But I'm still of the opinion that I wish that it had been all dropped at the same time.
Right. And I agree with that now. And
I also wish that the format had been a little bit different. If we were going to do this week to week thing, I think we should have gotten some of this information in this episode sooner, because waiting a month for some of this information, it was too long for me. Like I was not on board necessarily with some of the early stuff, because it was like, there's just too much setup here and not enough payoff, not enough telling us what's going on. And, you know, like I wasn't a fan of that structure. I think that, you know, we need a little bit more, I guess, insight into what's happening. And so I like this. It gave us that. But I think, you know, going forward, a mix of the two, I think is going to be perfect. And that's where the show's really going to, you know, take it to the next level. And I'm looking forward to that.
And I am too. I think you're right. I think what I think is going to happen is we're probably going to start, like you said, getting a mixture a little bit, but I think we're going to finally, I don't know if I'm going to say next week, but I'm going to say the week after at least. I think we're going to start seeing the puppeteer come out, either Mephisto, you know, whoever it is, like, you know, is it Agnes? I think whoever it is, I think if not next week, the week after for sure, we're going to start getting whoever it is.
We'll see. I mean, I think they're going to continue to lay groundwork. There's going to continue to be breaks in the reality of that world, but how much we actually know about what's happening, I think we're going to keep taking baby steps toward it. The last thing that I wanted to talk about is the acting director, Tyler, whatever his name is. I can't remember it.
Tyler, but
you know, it's one of those things where in a lot of comic booky type stuff, this guy would be a villain, right? He's stepped in to be the acting director after one of our heroes died, and he's, you know, now in control of this agency that's trying to monitor and figure out what's going on with one of our Avengers. And we would get the reveal at some point that he's actually in on it, that he's actually a villain. You know, why is Monica even there? Like, there's a really tenuous link to why she needed to go. And so I'm wondering, is this going to fall into that trap and he's going to be a villain, or is that all misdirection and he's not actually going to be a bad guy?
If he's going to be a bad guy, I honestly think he's going to be Mephisto, because that would make more sense, because Mephisto's always been a man. Not saying that he couldn't disguise himself as a woman, you know, in Dottie, but I think Dottie could be one of his minions. He has all these people who help him. He's essentially the devil. Let's face it. I mean, there is other powerful beings in hell where he's from, But I think if he is going to be the bad guy, I think it's going to be him. But I do want to touch, I don't think we did, the card scene going into the door with Monica. How the guy at the front desk was such a jerk. Well, if you did work here, man, it'd be working, wouldn't it? I was like, oh, dang, like shot fired.
He's not wrong.
No, he's not.
But it is also like there's also that fact of like, bro, like, do you not recognize that like half the world's population just came back 3 weeks ago? So it's entirely possible that she's one of those people. Like
exactly. Like her picture's right there by the door. It's like, dude,
that's the mom. But yeah, I mean,
was it the mom? I thought that was her.
No. That was the mom.
What?
That the picture was.
I thought it was. I don't know why.
It was of her. Maria.
I bet.
But yeah, I mean, and obviously, and they even show Jimmy on the whiteboard. He's written the word scrolls. So
I saw that too.
Scrolls are at least knowledge within this little setup. We don't know if that's a widespread knowledge. We know obviously that Maria, who set up Sword, had knowledge of the scrolls because she, encountered them in the 90s. Obviously Monica does, and the rest of people at Sword seem to have that same knowledge. And so the question is, have they shared that with these people that are there, or is that more widespread knowledge? But, Tyler could be a scroll. I mean,
that's very true too.
It's very possible that the scrolls took advantage of the blip. Because that would be an easy way to take control of a lot of people.
And I love how you comment on that, and I'm glad you did. To me, at this point, that means they're not good. Because why else would they think, like, if we're friends with them, like, oh, we wouldn't think it's the scrolls. You just kind of not worry about it. But to have them up there, that means they think they are some type of threat at least.
Well, I mean,
something has happened. Think
we saw, obviously, in the first Captain Marvel movie that the scrolls that we were introduced to were not necessarily villainous, right?
Those were like the good ones.
They were refugees. They were on the run from the Kree Empire.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, that doesn't mean that every scroll out there is a good person. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that we are going to get some scrolls that, obviously we talked about Secret Invasion is a show that's coming on Disney Plus. And so I don't think those are going to all be good guys.
Exactly. So, I mean, and in the comic books, there's not really very many good scrolls. There hardly are any. They're
mostly
usually
villains.
The villains. Yeah.
Right.
So I like that now we're getting a hint that, hey, these aren't always good people. Like you said, we just saw one little faction of maybe 200-300 of them or so, maybe, and that's it. And they befriended us. We can trust these ones, but who knows if they also told us, hey, we're just a splinter faction that we don't, there's a lot of us out there that are actually really evil. You should be careful because it's just enough to have that name on that board where I was like, Jimmy knows something. And I wish he would have commented. And
it honestly could be as simple as, Tyler, the real Tyler is not necessarily a bad guy, but this guy's a Skrull.
Yeah.
And that could be where he's, partially a villain as well. I am really interested because, and I didn't realize this, so we never see Agent Franklin's face, the guy that goes, that's the beekeeper. We never see his face. But what I was reading is that the actor who was in that suit as the beekeeper, the actor who's credited as the beekeeper, actually was in the opening credits of episode 3 as the ice cream man. And so we didn't see him get pushed out like Monica did.
No.
And so did, Wanda just wipe his memory and cast him in the show? He's now the ice cream man. Like, we don't really know.
Exactly.
So it's really interesting. I think we're going to find out what happened to him maybe in the next episode.
I hope so. And, let's go. I think we should cut this one because we kind of covered everything on this. And
yeah, I think so.
So definitely, guys, check out our other reviews if you haven't yet. Go check out our other shows throughout the week for anything with Get Your Geek On. And let us know what your predictions are, essentially, because I don't know. I'm curious to where it's going to go. I really think Mephisto's a villain, but I'm going to slide a Mr. Sinister in there just to put him right there. because I would be curious if somehow he's involved, because I would love to see that.
You throwing out Doctor Doom, I really want that to be the case. I still don't think it is.
I don't think so either. He's kind of like my lowest on the totem pole.
I mean, we got lots of Fantastic Four references. Even Franklin is, that's a Fantastic Four reference too.
Yeah, Franklin Richards is their son.
Cosmic radiation.
And I like that.
The astronaut training program. Like all of these things are very, like hints towards the Fantastic Four. Exactly. Actually, one thing that we didn't mention is that the Spider-Man Far From Home movie takes place about 8 months after Endgame. So the events of this show are before that movie.
Right.
And I'm wondering how this show is going to end, because there is an aspect of that show where obviously Nick Fury is off world.
Yeah.
By the time that movie comes around, he's up in a base that looks like it's a sword base. Right. As well as the fact that we get a lot of talks about multiple dimensions. We get, somebody so we got Mysterio saying that he's from a different dimension. And, and so maybe the events of this become maybe a little bit more public, and maybe that's where he gets his idea to sell that he's from a different dimension. I mean, so there's definitely some possibilities for this show setting up, even some of those events from Far From Home.
It'd be interesting. And like you said, we got a lot of comments on astronaut training, space work, radiation work, and all this. And that is a big Fantastic Four thing. And who knows, if they make a Fantastic Four movie, and what happens if it's in those 8 months between this and, Far From Home, they could talk about the negative zone and all of that, and that connects everything. It'd be interesting to see where they go. I'm hoping there's a Doctor Doom somehow in this. I'm not going to lie. I'm really hoping somehow Doctor Doom's, even if it's just, Victor Von Doom, he's not Doctor Doom yet himself. He's just, hi, my name is Victor. And it's that's all we get. I will be happy with that, because I'm it's one step closer for you to become Doom. I want my Doctor Doom back. I love him. He's my favorite villain.
I do too. Yeah.
So we'll see, guys. But let us know.
Great.
Yes. Let us know below what you think. What villain do you think would come out, besides Mephisto? I want to know what everyone else thinks. Everyone assumes Mephisto. Everyone assumes Agnes is going to be a villain. Who else do y'all think could come out, though? Let us know in the comments below. For Robert, now that way, and myself, this is Get Your Geek On. Stay geeky, guys, and get your geek on.